The producer said no, not unkindly, not cruelly. He simply looked at the little girl standing in the corridor of BBC Television Center, looked at the battered acoustic guitar hanging from her small hands, and said what any reasonable man in his position would say. "This is a professional broadcast, sweetheart. Not the place for this." Her name was Clara Hensley. She was 7 years old, and she didn't move. It was November 1975. The BBC had arranged a small music special, one of those quiet Thursday evening programs that filled the hour between the news and the late film. The lineup was modest: a session band, a folk duo, and Jeff Beck, who had agreed to appear largely because someone had asked him at the right moment, and he hadn't found a reason to say no. Beck had released Blow by Blow 8 months earlier, an instrumental album. No vocalist, no lyrics, no explanation, just guitar. The music press had called it everything from revolutionary to self-indulgent, and Beck hadn't responded to either description. He rarely did. He arrived the way he always arrived, quietly without announcement, carrying his own guitar case. A technician recognized him near the service entrance and nearly dropped a cable reel. Beck nodded once and kept walking. Thomas Graham had been a BBC producer for 11 years. He was good at his job, precise, efficient, not unkind, but constitutionally allergic to anything that hadn't been scheduled. When his assistant knocked and told him there was a child in the corridor asking to perform, he didn't even look up from his notes. "Tell her no. She has a letter. Tell her no with the letter. It's addressed to Jeff Beck." Graham looked up. Clara had come with her mother, a quiet woman named Margaret who had taken 2 buses to get to Wood Lane and stood now at the edge of the corridor holding her daughter's coat. The letter had been written 6 weeks earlier, before any of this had been arranged, before anyone knew Jeff Beck would be in this building on this particular Thursday evening. It had been written by Robert Hensley, Clara's father, who had died in September. The guitar had belonged to Robert, a 1962 Harmony Sovereign bought second-hand from a shop in Coventry for £3 10 when he was 19. He wasn't a musician, had never claimed to be, but he loved music the way some men love the sea, from a distance, with complete devotion and no real understanding of why. He had taught Clara to play on it, or tried to. She had mostly taught herself, sitting on the floor of their small sitting room in Wolverhampton while he listened from the armchair, eyes closed, not saying much. That was how Robert Hensley listened to music, in silence, like it was something that required his full attention. The guitar showed every year of its life. The top had cracked and been repaired with something that looked like furniture glue. The tuning pegs were stiff. The frets were worn flat. Clara carried it with both hands, the way you carry something you've been told not to drop. Graham read the letter twice. Then he walked down the corridor himself. Clara was sitting on a wooden chair, the guitar across her knees. She had dark eyes and her hair was coming loose from its plait. She didn't look frightened. She looked determined, which Graham found more unsettling. "Your name is Clara?" "Yes." "Who wrote this letter?" "My dad." Graham glanced at the guitar. "Can you play that thing?" Clara looked at him steadily. "Yes." He almost said no again. He had a program to run, a schedule to keep, a studio full of people waiting for clear instructions. A 7-year-old with a broken guitar was not part of any of that. He almost said no. Then Jeff Beck came around the corner. Beck had been looking for a cup of tea. He stopped when he saw the child. He stood there for a moment, guitar case at his side, saying nothing. His eyes moved to the harmony on her lap. Something in his expression shifted. Not in a way anyone could describe precisely, like a room when someone opens a window. "Who's this?" he asked, not to anyone in particular. Graham answered, "A situation." Beck looked at him. Then he set his guitar case against the wall. He pulled the other chair from the corridor and sat down across from Clara. "What's your name?" "Clara." "What are you going to play?" She thought about it for a second. "Something my dad liked." "What did he like?" Clara glanced at the guitar. "He liked yours, your records. He had the new one. He played it a lot. Blow by Blow, an instrumental album, not a single word in it anywhere." Beck was quiet for a moment. "Show me," he said. Graham opened his mouth, closed it. Beck took the harmony from the girl's hands and adjusted the tuning by ear. slowly, the way you do when you're not in a hurry. The corridor was silent except for the soft sound of strings coming back into pitch. When he was satisfied, he handed it back. Go on. They put her in the studio. Not planned, not scheduled. Graham made 3 decisions in 90 seconds that he would spend the rest of the evening questioning and the rest of his career being glad he'd made. Clara sat on a stool that was too tall for her. Her feet didn't reach the floor. She adjusted the guitar on her lap and looked out at the room. The cameras, the lights, a small audience of perhaps 60 people who had no idea who she was or why she was there. Jeff Beck stood just off to the side, in the shadow between the camera positions. He didn't sit. He didn't pick up his own guitar. He stood and he watched. Clara placed her fingers on the strings. The first chord was rough, open G, slightly buzzing, the kind of chord that makes sound engineers wince. But she held it, waited, then moved to the next. She was playing something slow, not a famous song, not anything anyone in the studio recognized. Just a melody, simple enough that a child could manage it, which was perhaps the point. No one made a sound. Her fingers slipped on the third change. She stopped for half a beat, the way children do when they lose their place in a recitation. Then she found it again and continued. By the second pass, the room had gone somewhere else. 60 people were sitting very still, watching a girl who was not performing for them at all. She was playing for someone who wasn't there. She wasn't looking at the cameras. She was looking at a fixed point in the middle distance, playing toward it as if the music had a specific destination. When she finished, the silence lasted long enough to become uncomfortable. Then someone started clapping, and then everyone did. Clara looked toward the shadow where Jeff Beck was standing. He wasn't applauding. He was watching her with the particular attention of someone trying to remember something, or perhaps trying not to. He walked forward. Graham moved to intercept him quietly near the edge of the camera line. We need to move on to... Not yet, Beck said. That was all. 2 words, no volume, no emphasis. Graham stepped back. Beck sat down beside her. He looked at the guitar. Your dad taught you that? Sort of, Clara said. He showed me the beginning. I worked out the rest. Beck nodded. He turned the guitar over slowly, looking at the repaired crack along the spruce top, the worn frets. He ran a thumb along the neck without pressing down. How long has he had this? Forever, Clara said. Since before I was born. He looked at the back of the headstock. Someone had scratched 2 initials there, R.H., with something small and sharp, probably a penknife, probably a long time ago. Beck looked at her. My mom has something, Clara said, from my dad. She said I should give it to you. Beck waited. Clara reached into her cardigan pocket and produced a small square of paper, folded 4 times. She held it out. He unfolded it, read it again. The audience could see his face. Nothing in it moved. No visible reaction, no change in expression. Just Jeff Beck reading a piece of paper in silence. Then he folded it and put it in his shirt pocket. There's a tape, Clara said. My mom has it. Dad recorded it. Margaret Hensley was brought into the studio. She was carrying a small reel-to-reel tape. A Grundig, battered, a strip of masking tape across the reel case with a date written in ballpoint. August 1975, 1 month before Robert died. A technician rigged up a playback deck. The studio waited. The tape began with a few seconds of hiss, then the sound of a chair, a small cough, and then a voice, mild, slightly hoarse, the kind of voice that had clearly belonged to someone who didn't often speak to be recorded. Clara. The girl closed her eyes. If you're hearing this, you found a way to be brave. That doesn't surprise me. You were always braver than you thought. A pause. The hiss of the tape. I want you to know the music helped. On the bad days, and there were a lot of bad days near the end, the music helped. Jeff Beck's record, the new one. I used to put it on when you'd gone to bed. Just sat with it in the dark. Beck was looking at the floor. There are no words in it. Did you notice that? The whole record, and not a single word. He said everything without saying anything. I still don't know how a person does that. The tape crackled. Tell him if you get the chance. Tell him it mattered. Tell him it helped a man stay around long enough to hear his daughter play. The tape ran a few more seconds of silence. Then it ended. The studio didn't move. Beck sat still for a long moment. Then he stood and walked to the far side of the room, away from the cameras. He stood there with his back to the studio. No one spoke. After perhaps 30 seconds, he turned around. He walked back to where Clara was sitting. He sat down beside her. He picked up the harmony, played one chord, just one. Let it ring. Let it decay to nothing. Then he handed it back. One more time, he said quietly. From the beginning. Clara looked at him. I'll be here, he said. She placed her fingers on the strings. She played. And this time, when she reached the part where her fingers had slipped before, she didn't stop. In the last 4 bars, so quietly that the audience wasn't sure at first whether they were imagining it, Jeff Beck began to play alongside her. Not leading, not performing, just there, just underneath, filling the space she left between chords the way you'd hold a door open for someone. When it ended, the room was still again. Clara looked at him. Beck said nothing. He simply nodded once. The way you nod when something has gone the way it was supposed to go. In a 1999 interview with Mojo, a journalist asked Beck about the moments that had stayed with him. Not the famous ones, but the ones that had changed something. Beck was quiet for a while. Then he mentioned a Thursday evening in November 1975. A girl with a broken guitar, a tape recording of a dead man's voice. The journalist asked what the note had said, the one Clara had handed him. Beck looked out the window for a moment. He said he listened to the record when things were bad, Beck said. He said the music kept him company. A pause. He said thank you. The journalist waited. That's all, Beck said. That's all it said. He didn't say anything else about it. The interview moved on, but the journalist noted afterward that it was the only moment in the entire conversation when Beck had seemed somewhere else entirely. Not in 1999, but further back, somewhere in a BBC corridor, sitting across from a 7-year-old girl, tuning a dead man's guitar.